very much indeed. 16 minutes and 20 seconds, I'm told, that red flag lasted for. It felt an eternity, said Simon Lazenby. Yes, welcome to what happens when there's no action on the track. But we'll get some action on the track, hopefully, although it does remain to be seen what that stoppage has done to the run plans of the various teams. Tom Clarkson is going to join me in the commentary box here. He of the official F1 podcast. Did you turn your mic on, sir? And other box. That one. Have you been podcasting today? Can we say who you've been talking to? How many questions did you ask in an hour? He is great. So you had how many bodies?
Do you know what, he was really good, he was really candid, and I mean, nothing to do, he was just in a good mood.
Yeah.
And,
Well, why shouldn't he be? He's 2
2
years in Formula 1.
2 years in Formula 1 at a team where there's no pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure to perform, he's just there. I am Kimi Räikkönen. Look at the number of commercial deals that are sailing in through the doors of him at the minute. Primarily because of him. I know people will say it's Alfa Romeo, but partly one of the reasons Alfa Romeo is there because of Kimi Räikkönen.
Well, you'll see a beer logo on the side of the Alfa car, and that is purely down to Kimi Räikkönen's personal sponsorship
he was
deal.
great, and it's gonna. I think history is gonna repeat itself. He was saying that his son, Robin, who is 4, is saying, "Daddy, Daddy, can I have a go-kart, please?" He's already doing motocross.
Wow.
Age 4, and so Robin Räikkönen, I think, is gonna continue in the family business.
I'm looking forward to that interview. That's going to be an absolute cracker.
So what have I missed while I was talking to Kimi Räikkönen?
Well, what you have missed, I should have got Karun and Simon to recap this because I was wandering back from the final chicane.
So between the two of us,
exactly when it happened. But we'll see it. We'll see a replay in a minute, I'm sure. Pierre Gasly into the kitty litter.
We didn't need to do that.
No, he didn't. Whether it was his fault or whether it was something on the car.
Whereabouts did he lose it? I mean, please forgive me, viewers, because I have literally been...
Having only seen one brief photo, courtesy of the internet, on this, I think it was down at turn 2, off the top of my head. But
it's interesting.
I'll tell you what, we've got the power here to say, is there any chance we can see a replay of any instance involving Pierre Gasly? And what normally happens when we ask nicely and say please, the replay is put up for us and anyone joining our coverage right now. So that is not down at turn 2, that's down at turn 11. Ooh. That's getting on the power out of the left-hander at turn 10, and maybe not having that rear end stability that he might have been used to in the past, but you don't want to be doing that in testing. No, I suppose the good thing, if there can be a good thing, is it's happened at 4:30 in the afternoon rather than 9:30 in the morning.
But you know what, Crofty, I look out the window here, overlooking the start-finish straight, and the conditions look absolutely perfect. There's very little wind. Fun enough, actually, I was reading the other day that the jet stream has got a bit of a boomerang shape at the minute, and we've got all this warm air coming up from the Azores that's going to hit the UK. Good news for everyone watching the UK, that it's going to hit the UK later in the week, but it's definitely here in Spain. So we've got this wonderfully still, warm conditions, which is perfect for testing. And back in the day, Crofty, they would have been taking out the fuel and going for a quick lap time. But I don't know if we're going to see that, because we've only got these 8 days, everyone's being a bit more coy about...
I'll tell you what we might see. We might see Lance Stroll with a little less fuel in, because they've been pretty much concentrating on aero testing throughout the day at Racing Point, and now they've got rid of all the pitot tubes. He's kind of unleashed here, and he can go for it to a certain extent. So we might see a little more deftness, nimbleness, as it were, on the Racing Point. Not to be confused with the Force India. That era is now gone. The Racing Point era starts. How much can he lean on the car going through turn 3? And onwards now to a really heavy braking zone, around turn 4 and down towards the hairpin at turn 5, where we've seen many lockups today. Not on this occasion. Thought you'd tee it up. Are they going to do well or not on that one?
Well, we're going to find out. So that first sector at 23.3. But there's a really interesting dynamic going on at Racing Point this year in that, Crofty, can you remember, when was the last time we effectively had an owner-driver in Formula One? And so the dynamic is, how does Lance fit into his dad's team without upsetting teammates, and just the sort of, he hasn't got experience, Perez has, so Perez in a way has to be the reference point for developing the car, but equally this guy is where the money's, you know, it's a complicated dynamic, and
yes,
it'll be fascinating to see how they deal with it.
Yeah, I can't, you go a lot further back in Formula One than I do, but I can't think of a driver son racing for the team that his father is a shareholder of. Lawrence Stroll, I should say, part of a consortium, but very much has headed the buyout of Force India to become Racing Point. But for that father and son, you know, that personal relationship that they've got now becomes a business relationship as well. And I'm sure both are very much up for the challenges that presents. But I actually have been racking my brains on this one. I can't think of it.
No, nor can I. So hence it'll be fascinating to see how it pans out.
So first and foremost, I think it's worth pointing out here that Lance Stroll is a former Euro F3 champion and has won championships to get to this stage. The accusations that he's only there because of his father's money, well, you tell me any driver on the grid whose career hasn't been funded by personal wealth from his family or by sponsorship. And I'm sure there is someone out there, but it takes money to work your way through the ranks, and the money's got to come from somewhere. And in Lance's case, it's come from his father, who, to be honest, has done nothing that you or I wouldn't do for our children. You know, were we that wealthy?
Yeah. I completely agree. I actually, in 20 years of covering Formula One, I can't think of more strength in depth than we have on the current grid. And yes, everything you've just said, I agree with. He, you know, he's done a lot of miles. Let's not forget, he's done a lot of miles. He's been racing all over the world. There isn't a month, you know, we have a racing season in Europe. Well, when Lance was growing up, when the racing wasn't happening in Europe, he went to America and various other places to keep racing. So he has a lot of miles under his belt for a guy so young. But, you know, he is a talent. I completely believe he's a talent. Whether is good enough to win Grand Prix, we're going to find out.
He's good enough to have finished on the podium before.
That was a great race. Baku.
A sensational race.
Really opportunistic, kept his nose clean when so many others don't.
Absolutely.
Everyone says, Nico Hülkenberg, such a talent, never finished on the podium. Well, every time he's had an opportunity to finish on the podium in Baku, he's binned it.
Absolutely.
So you've got to keep...
He does argue that there was a gust of wind that shunted him off the track in Baku last year. And when I said, really? So, you're going to use that one, that excuse on me? He went, no, seriously, I've got the data to prove that it was like a 50-kilometre-an-hour gust of wind. You know how bad it was at Baku because your suitcase was rolling down the streets at one stage. Yeah,
it was really... So, you know, it's a wonderfully talented grid, and we need to celebrate that. How they got here, I was take as you find. Let's take Lance Stroll as we find him in Formula One, and let's measure his achievements alongside Perez.
All I do know is he is a talented young man who was looking forward to getting his elbows out and racing a little further up the grid than he has been used to. Don't forget, of course, he started on the front row last year before last, in the rain at Monza, of course. So, in the wet, I think he's a very, very good driver, and we've seen examples of that in Euro F3. There was a weekend at Spa where I absolutely chucked it down. I mean, what weekend?
Your encyclopedic knowledge of Euro F3 is impressive, Crofty, I have to say. But you know, the wet is a great opportunity to see. I think that's where talent really comes through.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the in-car cameras we have today, and these things, if a car is working well and it's got a good balance, it's on rails, and it's very difficult to see these guys at work, see them, you know, finding the limit, whereas in the wet it's much easier to see, and Stroll always performs in the wet.
So we should
see all the good guys
on that one. The problem comes when there's only one set of new parts, and where does it go? You know, to Checo or to Lance, and you don't want there to be any bad feeling feeling from within the team that Lance gets preferential treatment, and I'm sure that won't happen. One thing I do know about Lawrence Stroll, having spent a little bit of time with him, is that he is a very, very successful businessman, and it is not great business, you know, just to go with the heart all the time. You've got to think with the head. If Checo's ahead in the championship, you've got to, you know, give the new parts to the guy that's doing well. After all, Racing Points, yes, is a vehicle for Lance now to drive in, but it is an investment that Lawrence Stroll has made, and a significant investment as well, and that money keeps on getting spent. You know, ask the team, they're buying up acres around their factory at Silverstone to develop and to grow. Valtteri Bottas is out on track, as you can see at the moment. In the pits, though, Fittipaldi for Haas, Norris, Ricciardo, and Hulkenberg as well, and Alex Albon, and of course Pierre Gasly. So let's just give you another brief replay of the Pierre Gasly incident, because it's worth actually comparing to something that happened last year as well. So here's Pierre Gasly, little twitch there as he got on the power, and then there's no chance of saving that as it rear ends into the barrier. But let's take you back to testing last year. This is Max Verstappen, same corner. Little twitch, and he just spins it round. It actually happened a little bit further on into the corner, and Max was able to avoid the barrier and to carry on. So what testing's all about, exploring the limits of the car and finding out.
It's a much lazier spin than Max had, wasn't it? There was a lot of energy in Gasly's crash.
Where Gasly spun, he's on the power, all the way through that, and I think Max is taking that right-hander, and it's a little less speed. I was actually at that complex when I went for a walk about an hour ago. Bumped into Daniel Ricciardo and had a little chat. And I said, so how's the car finished? It's too early to tell. Way too early to tell. I need more miles in this car.
I don't think he's being truthful with you there, Crofty. I think these guys, and the conversations you've had with these guys as well, they know within a few laps whether a car is, what's the expression, born well. Yeah. You know if you've got a good balance underneath you. And it's all about, just having a predictable car. They all want a neutral balance, blah, blah, blah. They know within a few laps. He knows, he's done plenty of laps. It didn't go so well when the DRS failed.
Absolutely.
But
I mean, he went on to say, look, it's no Ferrari. It's not in Ferrari's league, but it doesn't feel like a bad car. I just need more time to get used to it. But I'm getting on very well with the engineers and with the team, and it doesn't feel a massive change to what I'm used to at Red Bull, which is good to hear. Let's not forget, this is an Enstone team that won championships, in 05 and 06, and were very, very successful. So I think he's feeling that championship-winning pedigree and that hunger for competition is very much there, that he's been used to in the Red Bull program. But in terms of his car, he says at the moment, needs to get used to it just a little bit more. But I take your point. Lewis Hamilton was saying yesterday, straight out of the box, how well the car was performing. Sebastian Vettel was doing the same for him. He said he seemed upbeat about the season ahead, Daniel Ricciardo, which is good, because you don't want to see
well, he's kind of
grumpy Daniel Ricciardo
having voluntarily given up a Red Bull, which is aren't they saying the dimensions of the Honda are slightly smaller than the Renault, hence the rear end on that Red Bull is just so tight and aerodynamically efficient. You wonder what the likes of Adrian Newey and his team in Milton Keynes can do to develop that Red Bull. So he's voluntarily given that up. But on the plus side, anyone who's been to Enstone recently will see the huge investment Renault have made in that facility.
Absolutely.
It's phenomenal, and they've employed a whole stack of new people. A lot of young brains straight out of university, guys with oozing ideas. So it's really interesting to see how it all beds in. Perhaps not for 2019, a little bit premature, but certainly for 2020. And I guess that's what he's hoping. Did he comment on the engine power unit? Sorry.
No, he didn't, to be honest.
Progress from last year?
I didn't ask him too much about that. Alan Prost was there as well. We were talking with him, and then he got into a car and off he toddled. We also discussed a bit of heavy metal while we were there, because
I have to say, Prost and Dan Ricciardo, that's two noses.
Yes, there is that. That is. But if you want a mentor,
Alan
Prost is not a bad guy to have.
I say that endearingly. I have huge respect for Alan Prost. Grew up. First Grand Prix I went to, 1983 British Grand Prix in massive Prost supporter.
Don't
Have
get
been.
out of it.
No, I know. I stand it. It is a nose, isn't it? But wonderfully, I mean, you know, and in a way, are there parallels between the two in the sort of slightly more cerebral approach that Dan Ricciardo has versus Max Verstappen? That's the sort of immediate comparison.
I wouldn't,
Very much Prost's way of doing business.
yeah, but I wouldn't compare them as drivers necessarily. I think Daniel Ricciardo to me has been a hustler over the years. You know, he's a man that seizes an opportunity and he makes it happen very, very quickly. Prost, the thinker, you know, the man that, you know.
I was sort of thinking more off track than on track, but yeah.
Is there comparisons off track?
Just in terms of their approach. I mean, he's not the happy. Prost was never the happy-go-lucky. Maybe I'm not. I think maybe I'm.
I'm not sure.
Talking myself out of this.
I think there might be now. No.
But I do think one of the reasons Red Bull fought so hard to keep Ricciardo last year is I think they really valued his technical input. And Max, age 21, has matured hugely in the last 6 months, I think, and is ready. I think he's ready to lead that team. But I think maybe there were a few doubts. They would love to have had a guy like Daniel for another season, and hence they offered him a 1-year deal.
Absolutely.
Just to stay on, and yet still he walked away. But I think I think that reflects the high regard in which Daniel's technical and.
By that token, though, I'd say that every time Max Verstappen's been asked to step up to the plate, you know, and further his career in whatever ways, he's more or less done it. You know, and he's a guy, if you want him to be that team leader, I think he'll take that role on. He'll do it his way. But I think he has the maturity to do that. You know, we highlight examples of Max Verstappen being a little immature, because most of the time he is way more mature than his years suggest, if that makes sense. And occasionally you see flashes of his age, as it were.
Brazil Park Ferme.
Correct.
When you're talking about just before I came in there.
Yeah, the outbursts.
But I thought that showed passion and that he cared. And as a team, if I was Christian Horner looking at that incident in Brazil, I wouldn't have been jumping for joy. But I would have been, there would have been a tiny bit of me that would, yes, he cares, and he was frustrated.
It was also
Maybe
a
had
bit
his
premeditated.
own.
It was a bit premeditated.
Well, he had the whole slowdown lap to think about
exactly.
it, and maybe he was angry at himself. Maybe he was angry at himself, but he was angry. And I think as a team principle, you know, that matters.
Quick tweet. Paul Morgan says, think it's interesting on the Racing Points pre-car launch video last week. All the team were in team kit, including Perez. But Lance Stroll was in his own jacket and clothes. Won't bode well in the future. I can correct you on that, Paul. Yes, he was in his own clothes, but only because his race suit wasn't actually ready at that stage. So when they did the filming, he didn't have a race suit to wear, and he's a little bit taller than Sergio Perez, so they couldn't go in the same one. So that's why he was in his race clothes, not because, you know, my dad owns this team, I'm not wearing that. Yeah, don't think of it that, Paul. There was a very, very definite reason why it wasn't his fault. It wasn't anyone's fault, it just wasn't ready. Right, let's head down from our commentary position to somewhere in the afternoon sunshine. Rosanna Tennant is with the McLaren sporting director, Gilles de Ferran.
Yesterday no one was really saying very much, but what can you say today after 2 days of running?
Still not very much. No, I mean, look, it's testing, you know, we're just running through all systems check, making sure we're signing the car off for Australia, trying to understand how the car is performing in different conditions with different tires, trying to understand the tires, and in our case, trying to learn two new drivers, you know, how they operate, learn a bit more about the driving style. They're learning about the new car, so it's just an exercise, you know. I think particularly this test, you know, is important just to rack in the miles and, like I said, and sign off the car.
And you've worked with lots of different drivers in the past. What is it like working with Lando, straight out of the box, fresh as a Formula 1 driver?
Look, Lando is a very talented young man, you know, and I think he's settling in quite well in the team. I mean, obviously, he's had a relationship with the team for quite a while now, so he's not a complete stranger. We got to know each other over, at least in my case, over the last year. And during this winter, he spent quite a bit of time at the factory with our engineers and our mechanics and technicians, everyone actually, even did some work experience at McLaren. So, you know, all in an effort, I think, to make sure we work harmoniously, and I think all the preparation is paying off some dividends. We'll see. We're still a long way to go.
Where does Fernando Alonso fit into this week for you?
I think Fernando is part of the McLaren family, you know, and I think that in itself is a great plus for the team, you know, having his counsel and advice on various things is not only valuable for us but also for the drivers.
And he'll be here. We'll see him in Barcelona.
I think he might be here next week. Yeah.
You might. There we go. We've noticed that you've got an interesting design on the axles of your car. We've been trying to get a glimpse of them. Mercedes have glimpsed them. They see it as potentially an innovative step. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
No.
Were you instrumental in coming up with some new innovative ideas for this season?
I think it's fair to say that, you know, the team is, you know, there's a lot of bright guys there. We put a lot of effort into this year's car, and so try to put our best foot forward. But, you know, like I said, you know, we're all proud of the new car, as we should be, I guess. There was a lot of effort into delivering this car here to the test, but as you probably heard me on the launch, you know, we're humble. You know, we know there's a long road ahead, and the best way to walk this road is, you know, one foot in front of the other and tackling every challenge that we meet day by day.
When does humble meet success, and when does that effort start to pay off?
We just gotta keep walking, and usually if you keep walking, you eventually get there.
Good luck on that walk. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
I like the fact that McLaren aren't making bold predictions about we're going to be on the podium, we've got the best chassis, everything's going to be fantastic. That's not what the team needs for this season. Humble, I think, is the right word. A bit of humble isn't a bad thing, and, you know, under-promise and overachieve.
That was very much the message that at the launch that, you know, Simon hosted last week, obviously on Sky Sports F1. Very much the message from Zach and from Gilles as well. There's a little bit of me that wishes Fernando. I think that's also the clearest indication we've had yet that Fernando Alonso is probably going to have a quick run in the car at some point next week.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Half of me thinks actually his feedback as to where this car is relative to last year would be useful, but the regulations have changed and it slightly undermines Carlos Sainz. So if they've been coming in saying, you know, each debrief this week is, well, I think the car's doing this and this, if Alonso comes in and contradicts everything they've said, what does that mean? Where does that leave? I think you have, at some point, you've got to throw the keys at the new guys and say, get on with it, you're our boys now. So I think when you weigh it all up, I think I would say, you know, for all the brilliance of Fernando Alonso, and his presence is ever present at McLaren, even at the launch last week, his Indy car that he's racing this May is there in the factory in the MTC, being built up. He'd been there the week before, having a seat fit for Indianapolis, so even though he wasn't there in person, his spirit sort of was there, just
but are you saying,
influencing people.
Yeah, exactly. But are you saying to both of your racing drivers, yeah, your feedback's good, guys, but it's not quite good enough, that's why we're getting someone else in? Or do you cover it off by saying, look, you guys weren't here last year, we want to know what the difference is between last year's car and this year's car, and how extreme the difference is, to help us understand it a bit more, and there's only one guy that can do that, and that's Fernando Alonso, because Stoffel Van Dorn's busy. Is that the way you cover that off?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many questions in terms of what happens if he gets in it and actually the car is good, and that lap time that we saw from Carlos Sainz yesterday, second fastest, is real according to Fernando Alonso, and he turns around and says, yeah, I think after the Indianapolis 500, yeah, from Canada, I'll be in it. Thanks, guys, looking forward to it. Where do you, you know, how, I just think it's a can of worms that I probably wouldn't open if I was the team. And it seems such a silly thing to say at one level, because Fernando Alonso is clearly such a brilliant driver, but I just think he has a large shadow, and I think at some point you've got to move on, and I would probably do that.
Right. So let's move on then.
Let's move on. What do we got? Mercedes on the screen. They're being very conservative so far this week, aren't
Are they being very conservative, Tom?
they? Or do you think, is this a light fuel run and this is as good as it is?
or are they doing what they would normally do, but yet their pace isn't quite that of a certain red that you all think is orange car out there, by the way. Thank you for the tweets that refer it to a can of tomato soup, and Tony the Tiger, who used to advertise a certain sugar-coated cereal. It's red, I tell you.
I tell you what, there is an interesting quote from this man you're looking at now, Valtteri Bottas. He got out of the car yesterday, day one, and said, quote unquote, I quite enjoyed today. Quite. Enjoyed. Didn't even enjoy, quite enjoyed. And I just thought, it's a make or break season for Valtteri Bottas. And so maybe I'm reading far too much into it, but I thought it was an interesting choice of words, perhaps lost in translation.
I'd like to have enjoyed it a bit more, but it was good, but it wasn't.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Kind of just let me... Goes back to what I'm saying about Max Verstappen, that passion for driving and for racing that he's got with Red Bull.
But he's not Verstappen, is he? He's not a Verstappen man. He's not going to give you that Verstappen passion. He's a lot more calculated and thoughtful in what he says. I use the word quite, but I should say very.
Well, maybe you and Valtteri, two of the kind.
My other half, so quite good. That meal was quite good. Yeah, it was quite good. Yeah. Not very good. It's quite
You're
good.
not gushing.
I'm a bit Larry David in that.
Am I reading too much into it? I just thought it was an interesting choice of words. And I don't know, what did that tell us about his attitude to the season? What did it tell us about the performance of the car? And in fact, if you look at it there, just coming through that right-hander, looked a little bit twitchy. We were talking about balance earlier, and you wonder what they're playing around with.
So Renault at this stage, Hulkenberg's going to come out for another run, I would assume. They're looking at setup changes, they're looking at balance changes, they're looking at how what they've done in the garage has affected the car on the track. And they used to say that Mercedes doing exactly the same thing. These cars are probably not running in optimum, there's an F1 word, optimum setup and characteristics at the moment, because it's just getting to the end of day two of testing. But I just wonder, either Mercedes are just going about their own business, slowly but surely, nice and quietly, confident that they know and they understand what that car's all about, or it hasn't quite got the pace that they think it should have in these opening exchanges, as it were. The meeting last night, the debrief last night, apparently went on at Mercedes till about 8 o'clock. So that's a fairly lengthy end of first day briefing. Toto Wolff then, I was told...
The session only ended at 6.
Yeah, about 2 hours with Toto Wolff and the drivers in that debrief. Toto Wolff then went into the garage. After that, I might be reading too much into this one, but that seems to be quite a lengthy exchange. And Toto Wolff, man who strides down the paddock, and says hello to everyone, snuck in round the back today. Came in the middle entrance of the paddock, and then walked round the back of the Ferrari motorhome. He just didn't want to talk to anybody. It's like, got loads we want to say. I haven't seen you for ages.
I mean,
I could be reading too much into that, but I don't know.
And I am, they are a brilliant racing team who I have absolutely no doubt will, if it's not where it is meant to be or where it was in the wind tunnel, I'm sure they will make changes and get there. But it's going to be, I think, on the evidence of what we've seen so far, everybody seems to be reliable. Well, we yet to see Williams, obviously, but I think if Ferrari can strike early, just get some points on the board in those early races.
You mean like they did last year?
Oh, like they did last year, which is a good point.
That was the truth. Ferrari struck early last year. They won the first 2 races.
But I think, but that is exactly the point. Mid-season, going into the German Grand Prix, if you're a betting man, you said, Vettel's got this. He had all those points on the board. They still had
Silverstone, massive weekend.
Exactly. So yes, exactly the point. They got the points on the board early, and we went into prior to Hockenheim and thought, I think this is Vettel's to lose. I think there are a lot of people in the pit lane who thought that, did not expect it to pan out as it did. And I think Ferrari just seems to be a happier camp. If there's one observation, I think, we're all excited about Red Bull Honda. Can can Mercedes carry on where they left off? But I think one thing that I think most people in this paddock would definitely agree on is that the positivity coming out of Ferrari this year is very different to the previous seasons. And I think they're going to enjoy going racing again. And I think the positivity and the optimism that will come from that, just the whole thing will grow organically. And I think in a funny kind of way, that is what, Vettel lost his way last year. He doesn't have a manager, and there was no one in that team who would put their arm around him and help him on his way. And I think that won't be an issue this year because the atmosphere is so different.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. If he needed a confidant, he needed someone to put their arm around him and say, look, come on, it's okay. This is not unsalvageable. Maybe you're doing this wrong, maybe you're doing that wrong, maybe the team are doing this wrong and that wrong, but you can still work together and do this. And Maurizio Arriva-Bene did not seem to be that sort of a man. Great. I'm going to use another football analogy, and that's just going to annoy people. But Graham Taylor, the former England manager, brilliant man to sit and spend time with. I used to talk to him a lot in my early days as a reporter, and I said, what is the secret of management? And he said, well, you just got to work out who needs a cuddle. He said, some players need a rocket, need a kick up the backside, but there are other players who just need a bit of a cuddle and need reassurance from time to time. And once you work out who those players are, so you don't shout at them quite as much because they don't take kindly to it, then it becomes a whole lot easier. You just got to understand people. And Maurizio Arriva-Bene just seemed to me to be a manager who didn't necessarily understand that people are different and react in different ways, and was very much like, this is the way we're going to do things, this is the way I've been told, or the way I've been brought up, or whatever, but this is how we perform as a team. And then when you start pointing the finger of blame as well within that publicly, then you start to lose the goodwill and the motivation. People want a manager, they don't want a dictator. And I shall be going back there later on this evening. It's half term. Spend some time with the kids and watch testing from the comfort of my sofa tomorrow. It's going to be great.
You're not making me feel any better about it.
somewhere in Surrey, a man that knows me very, very well is saying, have I really just heard you call someone else an angry traveller? Yes, and he was. So, okay. Yeah,
well, and he is, by the way.
Yeah, he is, and I'm just chilling out in my formative years here. Why are the teams, Harry Jewett says, using tyre warmers if they're not permitted at race events? I thought they want to replicate race weekend conditions during testing. All teams I've worked for have always wanted to replicate conditions. Well, they can use tyre warmers this year, but the drive is on for the year after to get rid of tyre warmers. I'm not a driver, Tom. I don't go out in a Formula 1 car. I don't know how good or bad it's going to be.
That's not true. You've driven a Formula 1 car.
I have.
I'm being modest.
Yeah, and I don't think I had time blankets, had I? Oh, no, I might have done. To be honest, I wouldn't have noticed. I was consumed with everything that was going on.
It was Renault, wasn't it?
It was the Lotus, as it was then.
Yeah.
It was, with the Renault engine.
Have you told this story before?
I've told this story many times. Three laps of
Okay, moving on. Sorry, you're not a driver. Okay.
The best thing was we were sat having a planning meeting at Sky F1 last year ahead of the French Grand Prix. And I said, we should do a track guide. And yeah, we're going to do a track guide. I said, we should do a track guide with a member of the team that's got the most recent F1 experience, at Paul Ricard. He went, who's that? I went, I think that's me. Self-deprecation very much the order of the day.
I'm sure they went for that.
No, they didn't. They said, no, you're an idiot. We'll get someone who knows what they're talking about. I was third fastest on the day as well, without doubt.
No, you've told this story before. I think we need to.
80s moment of my very short
experience. But tyre warmers.
Tyre warmers, I would get rid of them. Because I think it places a skill on the driver on those laps out of the pits that is important. Okay, in an era where we have power steering, for instance, we didn't used to have power steering in Formula 1. You're wrestling a bear around some corners. But it places the skill on the driver. There's nothing wrong with that, because the cream will rise to the top, and drivers will have to work harder, but they'll conquer it because they are all very, very talented. What's wrong with that? And Romain Grosjean was having a few issues yesterday with the fact that the maximum temperature in the blankets is 20 degrees cooler on the rear tyres, and then he had his spin. Well, yeah, you get used to it, right? Everyone's going to get used to it. Is it really for safety reasons that we have tyre blankets, or because actually it is a lot easier for the drivers if these tyres are that much warmer when they go on the car?
It is definitely the latter, and we want to see drivers making mistakes because it spices up the racing. And I think a lot of the folk watching this at home, I think some of them will have been on social media over the years saying it looks too easy, that you watch the cars when they're on rails. Well, put them on cold tyres with 1,000 horsepower and it's going to look spectacular, and we're going to see them working for a living. It's just going to be like if they were driving in the wet. So I would completely agree with getting rid of tyre warmers. I don't see what it brings. Unfortunately, yes, it's a cost saving, and I think that's the biggest issue facing Formula One in the near future. I don't think everyone's talking about this overtaking. Well, when you look at the size of that DRS, postage box on the back of these cars as it goes there, I don't think overtaking is going to be an issue anywhere this year. I think it's a huge... Look at it. It's vast. It's 2 centimetres bigger this year compared to last year.
We're not going to be asking, are we, has he used the DRS or not?
So we're so worried. In a funny kind of way, it's going to be whether the cars can follow closer or not this year because of the aero changes. I think it's going to become irrelevant because of the DRS change. So,
but the FIA have the ability to reduce the DRS activation zone, of course. And it is designed DRS, and the length of the zone is designed so that the car behind should be able to get alongside the car in front into the braking zone. Obviously, sometimes it works better than others. But they have that ability then to reduce the length of the zone, and maybe that will happen, and maybe we don't need 3 DRS zones, which was happening last year at certain tracks to try and promote some overtaking.
But Cropsy, the only point I'm making is I'm not worried about overtaking this year. I think we're going to see plenty of it. Sadly, I think it's just going to be the push of a button rather than what we used to see pre-DRS, where the drivers had to plan 5 corners in advance, etc., etc. So the issue for Formula One is cost saving, and it's a really boring subject, but and banning tyre warmers will save a bit of cash, but they've got to go way upstream of that and find out ways of...
Forza Fergie says if tyre blankets are removed, every race would be a one-stopper for everyone due to longer warm-up times coming out of the pits. Not necessarily. The tyres might still be degrading or not lasting long enough for the driver to complete the race. But it's a risk, I grant you on that one.
Do you know what I'd like to see? I just think stop forcing the drivers to use 2 different compounds during a race.
Yeah, why?
Because then you can potentially do a one-stopper, and then suddenly you get proper mixed-up strategies. Is that...
A lot of people don't want to see one-stoppers, do
Fine, but equally then at least you've got the opportunity to go put some soft tyres on and go soft, whereas if someone's on a hard tyre, you're going to see different strategy. I think that would spice up the race.
I'd go the other way. Ferrari bring 3 tyre compounds to a race weekend. You've got to use all 3 in the race. At whatever stage you wish. But you're going to have to use all 3 in the race.
I just think it's then the regulations are dictating the race rather than the prowess of the individual team, the individual driver. But
or take away...
We don't have to agree, it's fine.
Take away 90% of the computers that work out the tyre strategy and go with gut instinct.
Yeah, computer says... What is it? Tom McCulloch, is he chief engineer at Racing Point?
Yes.
He always talks to me about situational awareness. He says you just can't rely on the laptop. You've just got to be out there and reacting to what is happening on the track. That is, you can't preempt what the weather's going to do or whether there's going to be a safety car. Just react to what's happening, and it's not a coincidence that Racing Point have had some brilliant races over the last few years because that is what they do.
Was it not Patrick Head that once questioned why Williams weren't reacting to the rain that was coming in at Malaysia, and was told by one of his engineers, well, it says here on the radar that it's not raining. Yeah, well, if you put your hand outside the door, it'll get wet.
Whether that's true or not, I can totally imagine it's the sort of thing Patrick would say. Yeah.
I really hope it was, to be honest. Oh, dear, oh, Lord. Omar, not just tyre warmers, get rid of blue flags too while they're at it. Get rid of DRS. hat-trick of it here. Lando Norris, in the way that, didn't Carlos Sainz do this yesterday as well, went for a glory run right towards the end, has just popped up with a 1:18.9, so 7/10 off Charles Leclerc, who will end his first day of F1 testing as a Ferrari driver as the fastest man. Glory run or not, that's a fairly decent lap time from Lando Norris there. But what I do like, what I really like here, is that he has put in 99 laps today, and that is not a flaky performance by any stretch.
Well, cast your mind back to this time last year. We were all freezing, weren't we? Because it was the snow and wasn't very Formula One weather.
No.
But the McLaren, everyone was hoping that they'd find reliability with the Renault power unit, and it was hopeless out of the box, the reliability. So look at it, Carlos yesterday, Lando today, and that is hugely, what is such an obvious thing with the old racing adage, to finish first you've got to finish. Well, they're ticking that box. Unfortunately for them, so is everybody else. In terms of putting mileage in, but it's hugely encouraging.
If they completed their runs, go for a bit of a glory run at the end of the day, why not indeed?
I've got it about McLaren. I know we're looking at Valtteri Bottas just knocking up the mileage. He's on 83 laps for today, and
Hamilton did 74.
Albon is on 128. Great effort from him, but
his neck's going to need about 4 laps later, isn't it?
But just going back to that McLaren launch, yes, we were discussing earlier about whether they should put Alonso in the car and the positives and negatives to that, but I was really struck, and I wonder whether Simon felt this as well, because of course he was presenting the launch. But look at Albon's not afraid of that thing, is he?
No, he's not.
He's really getting after it, and I think that's where he spun earlier.
Franz Tost really encouraged by the way he's reacted to the earlier problem that wasn't his fault, that the steering column wasn't performing in the way that he wanted, and the car, spun off as a result. But Franz Tost, I just only say this to interrupt you because we're talking about Alex Albon there. Franz Tost really, really happy with his 2 drivers at the moment, full of praise for both of them. I bumped into him a while back on camera. Sorry.
Oh well, great to hear. But just to quickly finish off on McLaren, one thing that really struck me was just the positivity in that place. Yeah. And I felt that was a huge step forward, almost as if the shackles had come off. Why the shackles were there in the first place? Was it the overpowering presence of Fernando Alonso? Was it a whole myriad of other things? I don't know, but I just felt it was just quite liberating to be there, and I felt that was reflected in everything that Zach Brown was saying, that Gilles de Ferran was saying, and Pat Fry is back there. Of course, he was a McLaren stalwart for many years during their hugely successful years with Hakkinen, and what a positive effect he's had on the team, and so it's just nice to see McLaren, at least that positive energy exuded.
Dan Vitale, tyre warmers. The old story about Juan Pablo Montoya was that he was absolutely dynamite on cold tyres. One of a good few races that were instrumental in his championship year. It can have a big impact and allow the talented to shine more. While Harry T says no, not having tyre warmers will be bad. Drivers will be wearing tyres, I think, and we could see drivers get in the way of others in qualifying and cause bad accidents. Not sure about that. Yes, you might have
We've got a halo,
but I think we'll be okay. And we do have a halo. That's very true. I don't notice the halo.
No, I don't notice the halo. I think I don't agree with the safety argument. I think these are the best 20 drivers in the world. I think they know what they're doing, a la Kimi Räikkönen, and let them get on with it and make it hard. This is meant to be hard. This is the elite of the elite, the best drivers in the best cars, in the most advanced, sophisticated cars.
If you get rid of tyre blankets, you take away any benefit of the undercut, which I think is more valuable in F1 than the car struggling for grip for a lap or two, says Max. Hi, I'm Julius, says, is this how you decide tyre strategies? Just shake some dice, throw some on the floor. Get back to the days of no tyre conservation. Make tyres that last so the drivers can push 100% from start to finish. Oh, Matt Greenacre, if only. But that's not what Pirelli were asked to do and charged to do when they came into the sport. That's not the way it is very much at the moment. Sean Davis says, who's in the commentary box with you? Just wondering. Tom Clarkson, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, Sean.
Don't say.
Well, was
that your late night radio?
I'm sure we met.
Yeah, that's me. That was like Nigel Havers in the commentary box with the very proper English accent. Hello, Charles.
Yeah, well.
Tom Clarkson of the official F1 podcast fame. If you actually want to hear more great in-depth interviews, I think your podcast is great, mate. I really do. I can't wait to hear the Kimi Räikkönen one to come. When's it coming out?
Just before Melbourne.
Just before.
So we have season 2. Season 2 starting.
I can listen to it on the plane down to Melbourne and go like, yeah.
No, you should already be there. I think if you're on the plane on the Wednesday before Melbourne, you're going to be late.
Mega.
Anyway,
Right.
On the way back.
I will have a listen while I'm out there. Right. I think Perez will get at least 3 podiums this year for Racing Point. What do you think? He's got every chance, I think, if that car is as good as they think it will be from Barcelona, certainly onwards. Just had 2 mandatory pit stops. Use whatever tyres you want, says Mark Chadbourne. And watching F1 testing, says inside the coach's headset, am I the only one who thinks the Scuderia Ferrari red is a shade or 2 lighter? No, you're not. It's been a dominating factor of the last 2 days. This is what the chat's all been about. I'm going to condense it into one. A, Ferrari are fast. B, Mercedes and Red Bull might not be quite as fast as the Ferrari. C, the Ferrari is not orange. It is red, but it is a lighter red. D, there's some other things to talk about.
And he drops the mic. There you go.
Boom, gone. Thank you very much. And to everyone that has tweeted in, hashtag AskCroppy, thank you very much. It is great to have your company with us for F1 testing. And don't forget, 2 more days to go. 2 more days to go until the test actually finishes. Sorry, Tom, you've got 20 seconds. I interrupted you then.
It's the honeymoon period, and I love the enthusiasm of everyone. Hashtag AskCrofty. You know, Perez is going to score podiums. Who's going to win? We don't know, and therefore that is what is so exciting about it.
Absolutely. This man, more excitement. Maybe not quite like that, but he's given us plenty of excitement today. Charles Leclerc still pushing really hard, but finding grip a bit less than he did first thing this morning. Right, 1 minute 30 seconds to go. 9 teams have been out there for testing. Just to reiterate, still no Williams. Car's going to arrive between 4 and 5, 5 and 6 tomorrow morning, I think. They are hopeful to get out into the afternoon. Don't think it's very likely they'll get out in the morning. They missed a quarter of the testing. They are a team very much under pressure. If there is a racing god up there that just wants to give someone a break, they'll look down at that Williams car and says, yes, you're going to be fast, you'll be fine. I'm not quite so sure that the racing gods are going to intervene like that. I'm fascinated to see how good or bad that Williams is tomorrow, but boy, are they struggling.
They are struggling, Crofty, and it pains me to see what they're going through right now. Who knows? I don't know their processes, but I know that some serious questions need to be asked of the people who have left the team in this situation. If you don't have the resource to build your car as quick as the Red Bulls and the Ferraris and the Mercedes, you have to just adapt accordingly. And if you can't do that, questions need to be asked, because there is so little testing. They will be going into Melbourne on the back foot, fact, as a result of what's happened, and that is very sad. I just hope they've got a silver bullet there, and that actually when it hits the track it's going to be blindingly quick, but we shall see.
Perfect timing. Checkered flag, ladies and gentlemen. I'm hoping is being waved somewhere because the red lights are on, and that is the end of testing. Yes, there is a checkered flag in front of us, and I say I hope it's being waved because, of course, this year, technically, we don't have a checkered flag. We have checkered lighting panels that will come out to indicate that the race is over, but the checkered flag is but a token symbol and not part of the official way of saying the race is ended. This was all been talked about after Canada last year, which I don't think was Mini Harlow's fault.
Oh, but it goes back before that. I think Pele missed Schumacher back in Brazil. It's happened before, so
you name it. But honestly, and I actually said this to Ross Brawn, don't take the checkered flag away from Formula One. In fact, I'm all for someone standing by the side of the track and waving it in as they used to at Paul Ricard all those years ago. It was fantastic. But the checker flag is out. Might not necessarily see it at other races this year. This was first thing this morning. Alex Albon and the Toro Rosso, first day of testing, and there he is down to turn 4 spinning, but there was a problem with the steering on the car. That was the first red flag of the day. Lewis Hamilton straight out of the box on duty with some aero testing in the Mercedes. On duty today for Red Bull, Pierre Gasly. This was Daniel Ricciardo, the upper end plate of the rear wing, flying off as he activated his DRS, and he did well to avoid the barriers at that stage. Albon into the afternoon now, finding it a bit tricky and spinning around. Lando Norris put in 104 laps in the end today. Pierre Gasly with the big crash today and rear-ending into the barriers, and that was his test session done after 92 laps. But once again, most amount of laps, 157 in total, only 12 less than his teammate yesterday. And with the fastest time, Charles Leclerc, Ferrari, pretty much replicated what Vettel did yesterday. And Charles Leclerc with the quickest time and the most amount of laps on the day. Lando Norris and Kevin Magnussen completing the top 3 in terms of times, as others went for glory run, shall we say, on the softer compound tyres towards the end of the day. Mercedes still not using those softer compound tyres. Bottas 6th and Lewis Hamilton 10th fastest overall. Daniel Ricciardo missed quite a lengthy part of the morning, only 28 laps for him. Nico Hülkenberg did 95 in the afternoon. No times set by George Russell or Robert Kubica. Still, we await to see the new Williams on the track, and fingers crossed that happens tomorrow.